Hi, this is Pastor Joel Webben with Right Response Ministries, and today you're listening to another episode of our show called Questions. Today's question is this: why did Pastor Joel leave Acts 29? Why did Pastor Joel leave Acts 29? To flesh the question out a bit more, we have this. It has come to my attention that Pastor Joel used to be a member in the Acts 29 network. Why did he choose to leave? What would he say to those who currently belong to an Acts 29 church? Great question. I left, I believe, back in 2018, at the end of 2018. There were a number of reasons, but the main reason is because Acts 29 went woke. And really, this was obvious long before 2018. I was in the network for 5 years, and every conference was about racial reconciliation. Let's have another conversation about race, a conversation about race, a conversation about race. It was all about diversity. People used to brag in the Driscoll days about how big their churches were, how many people were in their church, how many individuals. And in the Matt Chandler days, they brag about how many languages and ethnicities are in their churches. And that's the major focus. At least when I was there, that was the major focus. And I just got sick of the conferences, I got sick of the panels, and I got sick of the arrogant judgment from the leadership of Acts 29. I remember specifically a panel with Leonce Crump, Eric Mason, Brandon Washington, and Thabiti Boyle, who was the guest speaker that year, all of it being moderated by Matt Chandler, where they talked about, once again, race. And they talked about police shootings and how this absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, was proof positive of systematic racism. No statistics, no evidence, no cross-examination. If you cross-examined, you would have been crucified. You couldn't ask for that to be proved. You couldn't ask for examples. They've done a recent poll in our nation, not Acts 29, but our nation, with Democrats and then conservatives, Republicans. And with the Democrats, the question was, how many black people do you believe are unarmed and killed? How many unarmed black people are killed by the police each year? And many Democrats are answering the question by saying 20,000, 12,000, 1,500, when it's like 19. That's a 19. And even some of those are suspect. But you would have never heard that in Acts 29. And if you even tried to raise your hand or behind the scenes, right? Not an outburst, in the big meeting, but going to someone behind the scenes and saying, hey, it's just not true. It's just not true. And you would have been silenced. And then Eric Mason came out with his book, Woke Church. And I remember that panel. Chandler, at the end of it, he asked, what are some books that we could be reading? Racecraft was one of the books that was recommended, which is riddled with critical theory. But in addition to that, Leonce Crump, before giving some book recommendations that all the white pastors could be reading to posture ourselves as better whites, he first responded, Leonce Crump, to Matt Chandler's question, what books could we read to be better white people? He answered by saying, well, you see, this is part of the problem, Chandler. This is what you call the Numinous Negro. Remember the Green Mile? I memorized him talking about that. It was so profound, the way it just etched into my mind, because I remember being furious. Remember the Green Mile? The white people got a problem. Tom Hanks, he's got a problem, but they need the magical Numinous Negro to solve all the white man's problems. You figure it out, Chandler. You guys here, Acts 29, all you white pastors and your white wives, you Google it. You find books. Here you are asking me. Now, I didn't have language for it at the time. I knew it was, I did have some language for it at the time, but it was profane language. Like the language I had for it is that it was BS. And that's still the language I have for it because it is BS. It was bullcrap. But I didn't have the technical language for it. I didn't have the CRT, intersectionality language for it. But what Leon Scrump was essentially saying is this. He was saying, it's not enough to not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. And that's what the whole panel was about leading up to this. And to be anti-racist, you have to do your anti-racist homework. And your anti-racist homework is identifying racism in yourself and in society at large and in systems particularly. And then decrying it, both in yourself and in society and in systems. But the problem is you can't see it because you're privileged, because you're white. And so you need a person of color, somebody with a certain degree of intersections. It'd be great if they were a female person of color, right? Because they have two levels of oppression. They're both woman and black. And you need them to be your eyes and your ears to help, because you can't see. You're blinded by your privilege. You need them to help you identify, to see the racism in you and in society, so that you can confess it, you can decry it, call out against it, all those kinds of things. But here's the problem. You're going to need that person of color to help you. But by using a person of color, you've just engaged in another sin of racism, which is known as ethnic exploitation. See, because you've just used a person of color ultimately to posture yourself as a good white. So basically what that panel said, what Eric Mason said, Thabiti Annabwile, and certainly Leon Scrump, this is the thrust of it. And they didn't use this language either, and I didn't have the language to describe what I was hearing. But they basically said racism is everywhere. It's absolutely systematic, and it's probably in hearts of people here in this room. And that's why you got too many white people in your church, which is why we got to do a conference on this every single year. So it's in you, and it's certainly in the systems, in society at large, and it's not enough to just not be a racist. You need to identify it, but you can't identify it without our help. But Matt Chandler, when you ask for our book recommendations, right, you're asking for our help because you can't do it without us because you're blinded by your own privilege. You need us to be your eyes and ears. But when you ask for our help, we're going to accuse you of being racist once more because you're just taking advantage of the Numinous Negro. You're just engaging in ethnic exploitation. You're just using people of color to posture yourself as a good white. Now, to be fair, in the case of Matt Chandler, that's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what Matt Chandler's doing. I don't even think he's trying to hide that. I don't even think that he would deny that. Matt Chandler has infamously said, if there's somebody who's an 8 in terms of qualifications to be a pastor at the Village Church, but he's white, and then somebody else is a 6 or a 7, I think he said a 7 to be fair to Chandler, but he's black, we'll take the 7. We will take guys who are less qualified if they're people of color. Why? Aren't your people going to benefit the most by the people who can teach God's word the best, who can pastor the best, who are the most faithful? No, he's going to say, I'm going to do it because it's going to draw a diverse crowd to my church. If I diversify the leadership, I'll get diversity in the pews. And I would say, yeah, that's true. Why? Why is diversity in a local context, like a local church, such a big deal? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? If we go to Uganda and the average local church there is 99% black, who cares? There are black people there. It's fine. And you might say, well, yeah, but America is super diverse, Joel. That's not a good argument. That's not a good Okay, great. And the church in America is diverse. It is. It doesn't have to be perfectly diverse in each local congregation. The church is diverse worldwide. The church in heaven is diverse. The church in America is diverse because the population in America is diverse. But each local congregation does not have to be this perfect melting pot of diversity among ethnicity and culture. It doesn't. Because the reality is most places, even if a city is diverse, a church isn't in the whole city, it's in a local community. And each local community tends to have some kind of hegemony, a dominant culture, whether it be white or whether it be black. And if diversity is such a big deal, then what do we do with the concept of black churches? Black churches. They're literally called black churches by the members of those churches, by those pastors. I pastor a black church. I've never, when someone asks me, what do you do for a living? I've never responded by saying, I pastor a white church. What is a white church? And the devil's advocate is probably saying the white church is every church. That's where the white church is. Yeah, okay. No. This idea that diversity must be achieved and executed in every single local church is just not biblical. I think when we shoot for diversity, we're completely neglecting what Christ has actually called us to. We are adopting so much of the world's language and culture and lingo and presuppositions that just aren't true. They're just not true. So why did I leave Acts 29? I left Acts 29 because Acts 29 has always, since its origin, wanted to be cool. And that didn't change when they kicked Driscoll out. They just changed the rule book. Acts 29 has always wanted to be cool. They wanted to be cool in one way. Now they want to be cool in another. And I'm just tired of trying to be cool. I want to be faithful. So I left. Thanks for tuning in.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, would you consider supporting this ministry by giving a donation of any amount? You can do so by going to our website, rightresponseministries.com. Let's be frank. Sadly, many evangelical pastors and leaders are serving as nothing more than water carriers for the political left. Just as those in the political left hate you, just like those corporations that are left-leaning hate you, these pastors and evangelical leaders hate you. I know that's a strong statement to make. I'm aware of that, but it's true. They don't care about your personal liberty. They don't care about your freedom. They want you to love your neighbor at the expense of biblical truth, even if it means bearing false witness. That's not us. We're different. We're not the only ones. I don't want to be arrogant. God has reserved a remnant for himself in this time, as he has all other ages and all other places, but they are few and far between. It's called a remnant for a reason. We need your help. We want to stand up to tyranny. We want to stand up to this new left totalitarian regime. We want to defend Christians and people, the salt of the earth, who love America and who love God's word. But we can't do it without your help. If you're not prepared or able to give a financial gift, one way that you can support this ministry is by simply subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking the bell so that you'll be notified as we come out with new content. You can also help us by sharing our content on all your social media platforms so that more people can hear the truth of God's word with courage and fidelity. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.